Welcome back. Thank you very much for being so prompt. I think those extra 10 or 15 minutes really were of great value. Now, for those of you who are extremely adaptable and like change, I'm going to talk to you about social media. I've got a clue what that means, but anyway. Apparently, if you want to follow what's going on here, it's at IBIS Worldwide. And if you want to tweet, and presumably you all know what that is, it is #IBIS 2013. Okay? So that tells you what's going on, if you don't already know. I mentioned about technology. And in the past at IBIS, we've had presentations from many people, including car manufacturers, about the technology that's coming our way. I remember a particularly vivid one from BMW a couple of years ago. But we're looking at technology from a different angle. And our next speaker, a week ago, did not know he was coming to Montreux. He did not even know that he was coming to Montreux and making a presentation. In fact, it was debatable whether he realised it had sunk on him on Wednesday night when I spoke to him that he really was coming. So this is one of the IBIS team who's really worked hard at helping us in the situation we faced, which is something you just can't predict. So be kind to him, but listen to him because he's got some interesting messages. Please welcome Doug Brown from Fusion Experience.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thanks very much for being prompt, as David was saying, and for coming back. And hopefully over the next 20, 25 minutes or so, we've got an opportunity to talk to you about some technology, but also have a look at some trends in terms of where we might be going. I was struck earlier by some of the conversations and some of the themes that Paul was mentioning earlier around sort of fear of change. And I guess I'm here to sort of tell you today that we're in a period of conflict. It's something that's, you can trace its origins way back till sort of 1439, I believe. But we're in a situation where it's a conflict that affects everybody, every single person that's in the room. And it affects the way that we live, the way that we work, and the way that we love. And that conflict is around the control and monetization of data. The new digital era has provided us, both businesses and consumers, with new fantastic opportunities. And we are in a position, I think, in a unique position, the people in this room, to take an advantage of this, which will not only transform what we do, how we do it, but more importantly, how we make money for it going forward. As we look out, or David's already mentioned about the social media element, we are bombarded by various different messages, information, asking for data, permissioning. It's all already there. You've already been here, you've provided certain information to be here. Different companies, though, have approached this in different ways. For example, do you realize the first company to actually advertise and sell their products on Facebook was actually Pampers? Dell have already sold about 20 million worth of computers just on Twitter alone. I'm not saying that social media is actually the key or the panacea to what we face in terms of having the relationship with some of our consumers. All I'm saying is that different customers, different organizations have approached it in different ways, and that's made making decisions, both for the consumer and for the companies, very difficult. What we need to do, I believe, is to try and help provide insight, clarity, to actually make sure that information and that intelligence can be brought together and actually focused to help people make decisions, not only consumers, but also looking at the people who actually provide services and actually supply us in this industry. From a risk position, Donald Rumsfeld, the former US Defense Secretary, came up with a cracking phrase here: there are the known knowns, there are the known unknowns, and there are also the unknown unknowns. I'm sure that's as clear to you as it is to all of us here today. But one thing is clear is the ability to be able to look at data. Data is massive. As a mankind has generated over the last 2 years more data than we have ever done in the history of our existence. And the challenge to provide that insight is absolutely critical. And so the ability to be able to harness that data and to use it in a meaningful way to come out with a commercial outcome is absolutely critical. What does that mean for us? Everybody in this room is in the risk business. We make risk decisions every day in terms of our own personal lives and in terms of our own businesses. When we talk about new technology, and we talk about telematics, telematics can assist us to better understand the interaction between human behavior, technology, and risk. And they do that in a couple of different ways. The ability to be able to pay as you drive, to pay how you drive, can drive certain benefits. Improve segmentation for insurers to understand which particular individuals have a better driving profile. Better risk selection, cherry picking if you like. And the ability to understand insight and fault. And not only about that, but also to be able to provide details on the claims themselves. So what does that new world look like? The ability for consumers to be able to take the choice that they make has been sort of driven really about having low-cost applications, low-cost ability to be able to access information in a completely different way. There are already organizations who are trying to actually get the best from a very simple device, the actual iPhone here, or any telematic company can use apps to get information from this to be able to personalize it and turn that into commercial advantage. Well, how are they doing that? A lot of the manufacturers are already creating connected smart vehicles. David was already mentioning in terms of Russia, to have that camera there to be able to record data of incidents, people's interactions. It isn't just about that. It's the ability to actually have that data available in a meaningful way to be able to understand where you are, to be able to, when an airbag is actually deployed from a claims perspective, to be able to send a message out, to contact the repairers, to be able to provide you information as to where is the closest the garage, to be able to provide that information, to call the emergency services. All of these abilities are already with us. This is not new technology. This is the way in which it's being applied is new, but the way in the technology already exists. One area in which we spend a lot of time on is looking at is this concept of talking about behavioral passports. What's interesting is if we look at everybody here today and we look at the driving ability, if you went outside and went into the F1 car there and we all took measurements of how you drive, your actual driving profile is the same. Whether you're driving a white van or whether you're driving an F1, your ability to look at and predict risk is very similar. So if you think about it, if you can imagine that you had a behavioral passport which had your unique profile, your unique data, and that's what you would use to be able to look at your premiums, to be able to get a price, to be able to dictate what virtual services that you want. That's already being built and already is available. So it's changing significantly the traditional way in which we know, target, sell, and service different customers. And we're doing it in different ways. Different customers want different things. We have to have the ability and flexibility to be able to respond to that. The insurance models are changing significantly because it's not just about the ability to be able to talk to the customer, to communicate with the customer, for them to provide data to us using new technology. It's also about changing the actual business models to ensure that insurers, suppliers, manufacturers and repairers have the ability to actually take advantage of some of the actual technological changes and social changes that we actually see. I'll just show you a couple of different models that we've already been working with. And I'm glad to say that some of the insurers are actually looking at other companies now to be able to see how they do things, to be able to take advantages and insight from different industries. One of the models is the sort of own value chain, if you like, where the telematics element of it is linked directly with the front office, the back office, and the middle office to be able to have one integrated approach and to be able to deliver different services in a completely different way. That has the advantage of being able to retain profits, manage the risk under one brand, and actually, for customers, it's an excellent way to actually get the benefits from all of the different technologies that companies have. The next model that we're seeing is very much a UK-type model, which is a panel MGA approach, whereby telematics are provided through a regulated entity. There's a panel of insurers that sit behind that who cover the risk. And it's a very embryonic, but it's certainly a tangible form there. It certainly shares the risk. It has the ability to, again, lower the sort of cost and element, but it's still very, embryonic. The other element we've seen is a straight outsource. Some of the companies behind me provide those types of services. Again, for an insurer, it's very, very low cost. It manages the customer very well, but actually there is a risk in where you're outsourcing your brand experience, your brand identity. And indeed, we've seen with a couple of the insurers, funny enough, in some of the developing markets that I've been involved with, is that they're really evolving into sort of virtual brands. The insurers are actually spending more time on just underwriting the risk and outsourcing all of the other elements to it, the policy production, the innovation, and the servicing. What's really interesting, as we're seeing, is this utility model that's been now being created, where we're seeing emerging a blurring of different organizational boundaries, a blurring of employee responsibilities, and it's all being geared around the customers. So it's less about having a supply chain and having different parts of that. It's more actually integrated, and we're seeing that model is being rolled out certainly in different parts of Europe, as we've seen. Russia has that type of model, and certainly in Brazil, they're also looking at that type of model. They're actually skipping the first three and moving on to that type of model. In terms of the approach to that, I think the vehicle-centric model is not sustainable in the long term. I'll touch on in a second in terms of what telematics could potentially do to premium income, which will affect the profitability of nearly everybody in this room. But the new mobility propositions, connected vehicle technology, means that we can align ourselves with consumers in their digital lifestyles, and that is important. The consumers will control what we do go forward, and we must be able to respond to that in a positive manner. However, with telematics, there are a certain degree of challenges. People say that telematics, the use of technology to be able to, the use of apps, if you like, to capture customer intelligence in real times is something that is something that's in the movies. It's something, Tom Cruise, Minority Report. But actually, it's already here and with us. But there is some significant challenges. One of which is quite an interesting one, is patents. So there is one particular insurer in the US, Progressive, has taken out a patent in terms of how telematics actually operates, and the scoring mechanism to be able to take customer data. Other customers, like Allstate, other insurers like Allstate, for example, have decided not to create their own, but to work with Progressive to be able to look at this user-based insurance and the intelligence that comes from that. But there are other issues and challenges that we often see as well. One is regarding consumers in relation to the data privacy, in terms of the verification of that data. So in other words, actually from a driving point of view, you might have the cameras in Russia that David mentioned earlier, but actually you need to be able to verify who's in the vehicle, who's driving, who's the behavior that you're managing. And you can see here coming in from the southwest here, the adoption versus the technology advancement. The technology is already here. The consumers want it. It's up to us to try and actually get to there and embed that technology in what we're doing as our business processes. One other element is looking at the segmentation. So segmentation in the UK, very much telematics has been used to target young drivers and to help them get on the ladder or on the road to driving. In the US, it's very much around looking at safety, looking at safe driving and targeting them. As we move forward, the segmentation will become more sophisticated, more intelligent, and we will see that, as we'll touch on the next slide, there will be some winners and there will be some losers in that process. But I think key to everybody in the room here is our ability, the agility and flexibility of being able to bake what telematics actually provides to us, the level of responsiveness that we need, and looking at that data, can we put that into our systems? There are some pros and cons for telematics. The use of that as we go through. For individuals, it's the first time really that the good guys get a good chance. If you talk, people talk about fraud, adding an extra £50 to every premium or €80. This, for the first time, you can rate and risk based on your individual performance, not anybody else's. The sort of pool arrangements will be a thing of the past. That should drive lower premiums for you. Data privacy is important, but also there will be some individuals or segments of society which will actually be disenfranchised, that will not be able to take part in this new world. That's because either they have a bad driving profile, or, for example, they live in a particular area which, based on the intelligence, doesn't provide a good risk. So therefore, what are they going to do? Is it going to be like a bad debt situation? How can they get out of that? It's very difficult for certain people to be able to get the benefits which telematics may provide. Micro-segmentation for insurers, fantastic risk selection. They'll be able to cherry-pick those risks. It will reduce fraud. If you have seat sensors to understand how many people were in the vehicle, to understand whether the seat belts were worn, whether they were deployed, to be able to understand the severity and nature of the injuries is going to be, again, providing extra information to rate that risk and to be able to manage the claims in a more intelligent way. Fraud is important. I mean, fraudsters have a lot in common with people in this room. Certainly organised fraud. They're intelligent, they're resilient, they're forceful. So the ability to be able to predict and to understand how they're actually trying to target our industry will also help us reduce costs and improve customer experience. However, that does come at a price. The customer churn that we will see will increase significantly. Lower premiums. We'd also have the ability, at least what we'll see anyway, not only the basis to have lower premiums, but also lower profit as we go forward. There has been some statistics, I'll just read those out to you, that have been produced recently to say that premium income, if telematics is taken up, and we have targeted premiums, targeted premiums, that 25% of the total 2012 total industry premium will actually go down by 20% in the next 5 years, and then down to a further 10% in the following 5 years. Physical damage will also decrease, so it'll be 14% of the 2012 total will actually go down by 10% to 3%, and that has significant bearing on what we do and how we see it going forward. Motor repairers, it does represent a phenomenal opportunity. The repairers interact with the clients, interact with the customers. You are at a point where you can actually capture that data. To hold that data, control of the customer is where the new conflict's going to be as years develop. The network capability, there'll be sort of concentration at the top end, so more networks will come together. Hopefully that will provide more capacity, but nevertheless, the downside is that there'll be less accidents, less collisions, and therefore that will be a threat to profit margins. And depending on the mix of retailers and the business that they have, that could prove to be a significant issue for the viability of them going forward. For motor manufacturers, we've already seen to a certain degree, they have spent a lot of time embedding telematic systems into some of the cars that they already see, managing cellular connectivity, which will provide connected services at the point of sale. And that provides new opportunities, new revenue streams from weather information, traffic, personalized information. BMW is already providing this already as the car's becoming the virtual assistant to the consumer. This will increase. However, with the reduction in the anti-collision technology, then that will create certain pressures and issues where we probably see, like IBM has under Lou Gerstner, moving away from more manufacturing and concentration on tin and moving to more solutions and services-based approach. For those at the back, I apologize for this slide, but hopefully you can see there the actual, when we're talking about the technology is already available, it's already here with us. However, the anti-collision bubbles, those automated cars, the collision avoidance will have a significant impact in terms of what we do. That also in parallel with the consumers who will be able to have the control and power of their own data, then that provides significant challenges for us and our models as we go forward. So what's the difference? What's going to be different as we go forward? There's going to be some people, some insurers, some repairers, from some of the manufacturers who actually won't necessarily be able to take advantage immediately of that opportunity. So there's going to be people that want to stay in the game. And they are just going to be able to concentrate on the high volumes, just ride that wave until the technology becomes embedded and adopted. However, there are certain companies already who are looking to lead the pack. Those companies there will be able to use smart data, to be able to use that consumer data, federate that with their own supply chains to ensure that they have engineers at the right place, the parts are available, tracking on OEM, to be able to make sure that they're getting the right level of profit. But the real game changers, the ones that are going to make significant difference, the ones in the top corner there, they have to have a clear strategy. Who owns the customer? How do I manage the data? How is it integrated in terms of my supply chain? How can I differentiate myself in this new digital world? As we go forward, there are a number of different observations. Telematics will never be a universal solution for everybody. It won't. It won't be for the consumers, it won't be for manufacturers, and it won't be necessarily for the actual repairers themselves as well. But it is already here. The key and the real battlefield as we go forward is around the data, the collection, the capture, the use of the data, and the control of the customer. We'll also see, I think, intensified competition. If you look at some of the other organizations outside of our industry that already have access to consumer data, they will see it as an opportunity. They will come in and will have virtual brands, whether it's banks, supermarkets, Amazons, who come in. But that's good news for us because they won't necessarily have the capability to provide those services, and there's a significant difference between the sort of personal lines and the commercial. Fleet will always need the degree of human interaction. Personal lines can be automated. Personal lines can actually, to a certain degree, be based on the actual data itself. The United States and the UK experience has shown us that there is a need, a demand for telematics as things go forward. However, arguably, it hasn't necessarily gone as far as we wanted it to do. But consumers are catching up, and I think the new technology coming in will accelerate that actual process. And I think that allows us to move more from a static and reactive approach to a more adaptive and predictive element. I mean, we're already working in a couple of countries, Russia and Brazil, to look at the proposition, to look at the propensity of customers to do different things, to predict whether they're going to make a claim, to predict whether they're going to, how much they're going to pay for premiums over certain channels, to predict if they're going to actually pay monthly premiums or not. So the ability to bake that into the processes and to be able to target these customers is something that isn't in the future, it's already with us today. Telematics has often been thought of something that we should be, it's in the future. But actually, I'm reminded of when I go down to Miami, there's a place there, there's a little shack that sells lobsters. And it has a sign over the top of the shack, and it says, "Free lobsters tomorrow." Now, you'll never be able to get tomorrow. Every time I go, we never get any free lobsters. But we have to think about that in a way that it's already here. We can't wait until tomorrow. We could provide lip service to it. That if we decided to go down that route and just wait to see what happens and we just stay in the game and we don't move to changing the game, that's like an actual cannibal, for example, a cannibal that's gone on a health kick that only eats vegans. We've got to be able to try and think about trying to do something different with here. We cannot rest on our laurels. One thing we do know is that we've been working a lot to actually decode the future, using intelligence to try and drive different business models, to try and bake what we do into everyday life. One of the things that we've been working with a hire company on, a global hire company, is that when somebody hires a car, they provide certain information about themselves. We've been working with them to try and develop some of the driving profiles, and it tells us that on the third day, that's the day in which you're probably more likely to have a crash than any other day. Now, considering that we're on sort of officially day 2 of this conference, for any people that are driving or are going to be driving on day 3, then certainly be very careful, because day 1, you're careful. Day 2, yeah, I'm okay. I reckon I can drive pretty well. I'm getting the hang of this. We're driving on the wrong side of the road over here. It's great, no problem at all. It's all fine. Windows down, radio's on, arms out the car, working very well. Third day, you're completely blasé, and that's when the risk is going to happen. we're considering that some of the insurance industries might already be on the third day. We've got to think about how we collaborate and to use things in a completely different way. Telematics can provide some insight into that. But I think if you look at the logos behind us, the great opportunity that we've all got today is to be able to collaborate. If we had some linkages between those, the logos that we have here, then we will be in a very, very powerful position. Because the business models are changing, the consumer attitudes are changing, we need to make sure that we are collaborating and making the best of a fantastic opportunity for us as being part of this great industry, but also as consumers. That's the main challenge for today. Thank you very much for your time, your participation, and for listening to me today. And as I said, if you're driving, be careful tomorrow, as I'll be walking. But if you have any telematics elements or industries or technology in your car, just be careful because we will be watching you. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm glad you ended at the end about the great opportunity, because up to that point I was thinking, where do you fit into the optimistic part? You talked right at the beginning about data collection is going to change the way we live.
Yes.
You also said that data collection is going to change the way we love. Now, I'd like you to tell the 380 people exactly how data is going to affect the way we love.
That's a great question. The reason why I bring that up is we not only do we work with the insurance industry and looking at profiles, we're working with other companies that also are looking at the same data, and that includes dating agencies. And specifically, we have one client that's a Russian dating agency. And they're very interested in terms of the data and the profiles that people provide. And what they do is they harvest the information. So it's not just from, we're providing information here on insurance, on a premium, on a claim. They also federate that information from other areas, and it informs the level of profile. And that attractiveness index, if you like, is important to somebody who's looking for love, as it would be who's looking for cheaper premiums. You are in yourself, you are the index. You become that person, that you represent that identity. And that is a very valuable asset at the moment. Is the data asset in itself is becoming something that it should be on companies' balance sheets. The more information they have, the ability to be able to provide that into a key decision will make the difference between whether they're successful or not.
So you could go around the room here and find out who's more attractive than others? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I have some slides that I could share with you at this point, but I won't on the individuals here, but we won't go there.
Perhaps you can do it at lunch.
Yeah, we can do it at lunch. Yeah, everyone wants to have a chat through with that.
Right. I would like to get some involvement, particularly from some insurers on this, and I'll open it up in a minute. Telematics.
Yes.
It's Big Brother.
It's seen as Big Brother at the moment, yes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? For the consumer point of view, is it a good thing or a bad thing? That's the question, for the first part of the question.
Yep.
And for the industry, is it a good thing or a bad thing? So do the consumer first.
I think the consumer, over the last couple of years when the new technology has been available, it's seen to be Big Brother. But actually, I think you can turn that on its head. We're all in charge of the information which we could provide. We have a choice in the way that we provide it and to whom we provide it and for the benefits of that. I think that the drivers or the owners of the vehicles have got the control of that data. If they think it, rather than using it as a Big Brother technology, to be able to use it to benefit what they want to do, I think that is a significant difference, and I think we'll see that. I think there's also a big difference between perhaps the generation that we have in the room here that I look out on, and the actual younger generation, the actual Y generation that's called. They're already part of the connected world, the collaborative world. They're already happy to share data, and I think it's that wave that will make the significant change.
So as we go through the next few years, it's going to have more and more of an impact.
It will do. I definitely believe that will indeed be the case, and that's important for the industry elements of it, for a Big Brother. Actually, we're already working with data. We're already trying to understand it. We're measured to death, literally, in terms of SLAs and everything else. It's something that's not new. Service level agreements between suppliers, insurers. That's how we live, and we're sort of measured by it, really. But it's just another form of data for the industry. But we need to get smarter in terms of how we use and capture that data. And I believe that every part of the supply chain in the industry has an opportunity to be able to take that forward.
Okay. You had two descriptions, pay as you drive and pay how you drive.
Yes.
Right. Are insurers adopting both, or are they choosing between one or the other?
That's a great question. It depends on the business models. I think there's a spectrum between the both. I think certainly some of the insurers that we've talked to are looking at how you drive. Is very important in terms of being able to do that in collection. It's important as it is for fleets to be able to reduce safety, to be able to understand how that driver works with that particular vehicle, to reduce some of the fuel elements, to be able to have predictive views on what comes up. So in terms of a risk factor on roads. So there's lots of different ways in which they can look at it. But I think how is becoming more important than what.
The when is less important than how.
Yes.
It's the driving style rather than... But for younger people, telematics has come in to prevent them from driving late at night or early in the morning when they're more susceptible to having an accident.
I think that's definitely true, but it can be used to inform and help them be better drivers. And I think that's the other side of that risk coin, if you like. It isn't just about looking at how they drive, but also to help them understand how they could be better drivers.
Right.
And I think that's where the benefit is.
Are you saying that fleets, and I would include car rental companies in this, are highly likely to adopt telematics to control their costs?
I believe so. I think they're already doing it. I think we're already seeing that where you can track the use of the vehicle itself, the driver's behaviours, the impact on fuel, the impact on parts. But I think it will go a stage further to be able to provide information to the individual drivers themselves on features on the roads. And if you can blend that together and understand how that individual driver operates and manages that particular fleet, then that vehicle, that will make a significant difference to cost, but also, more importantly, to reducing the actual risk and accidents on the road. Okay.
You mentioned about smartphone, and on the next presenter we're going to do that. And what happened was he held it up like that. Now, those of you who've got a bit of a memory, remind yourself this is a cassette tape. Okay. But actually, you should have turned it round like that, because it's actually a smartphone. But this is also a key part, isn't it?
It is very much, because I deliberately have done that, is because the reason what we're looking at here is that we're not just ignoring old technology either. The ability to be able, we're not trying to transform the world. All we're trying to say is that the new technology can be packaged in a different format, but you're still going to use it for what we do, which is basically making risk decisions. This is not new technology as such. It's just the way that we apply it will provide the opportunities for us all going forward.
Well, we'll come on to that with our next speaker. I'd very much like an input, please, from an insurer. Now, obviously, I'm quite capable of finding my own insurer, but if you could put your hand up and get involved in this from your perspective, it would be great. Okay. If we have a microphone down the front, please. If you can run, Brent, that would be really, really good. Thank you very much. So Brent, this is Brent, who works with the team. How old are you, Brent?
25.
Sorry?
25.
Can you have the sound on, please?
25.
25?
Yeah.
What do you think about telematics?
Didn't really help my insurance claim, so I didn't go for it.
Okay, why not?
It didn't lower my premiums at all.
Ah. Why is that then?
Well, because at the moment, I don't know what information he provided, but if you had an ability to be able to understand what your profile was, and we could understand that, I think the insurers would be able to understand your risk and then be able to load or actually discount your
would you say
premium
he's high risk?
I couldn't say that. I don't
who
know.
employed this guy?
Who
employed this guy?
You have to ask him.
I think he's just too tall. That's his problem. That's why you didn't get... there we are. Right, here we are. Can you introduce yourself and turn round, please?
All right.
It's on, yeah.
I'm Aidan Quinn with Bristol West from the United States. I actually had a question for Doug.
No.
Questions?
No.
Never mind.
What is your view of telematics seen from an insurer point of view?
Well, from an insurer point of view, I think that it provides a tremendous insight into assessing a risk. Obviously, it's a valuable actuarial tool. I think it certainly has a bit of a big brother feel to it. And I think from an insurer, it allows an infinite number of segmentations in order to assess the proper price to the right risk.
Could you tell the audience what you mean by different segmentations?
All right. An insurer will assess bands of pricing depending on the category of the driver. And what Doug pointed out was that if you can increase the number of bands, you can more accurately price to each individual driver. And if you can change the pricing structure to an individual person, where you're pricing exactly based on pay, how you drive, and who's in your vehicle, whether you're using appropriate safety precautions, whether you're exceeding the speed limit, those behaviors absolutely will provide a more accurate premium. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
Why?
Because you're going to drive away some folks who might be less willing to provide that information on a data privacy level. That Big Brother 1984, the book I'm referring to, not the year, that sort of behavior frightens people, I think, that invasive look into life. It concerns me, personally, from a business standpoint. As an insurer, I think it's an extremely valuable pricing tool. But I think the jury is out. It is yet to be determined how this will be perceived or received in markets. And
so, as an insurer, are you more interested in controlling risk or having more policyholders?
More policyholders.
So risk doesn't matter?
It does, but more policyholders provides greater opportunity to mitigate adverse risk.
Nicely turned round. Right.
Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question.
All right. So my question is, with respect to data privacy, which is becoming heightened in places like the UK and South Africa and the United States, I think that there is a bit of a backlash which came from, you briefly referenced credit scoring.
Yep.
In the United States, there has been some regulatory resistance to that. Do you see a significant impact from regulators as far as dealing with telematics?
That's a good question. I think that's a great question. I think we do, because it's quite interesting in the fact that the connected world that we live in is actually, we've got the ability to share all of our own personal data in a way which we have never had the ability to do so. However, as a counter to that, I believe you're absolutely right in terms of the regulation and management of that sharing and the ability of commercial organizations to be able to exploit, to manage that data is becoming even more acute, and the focus is on that. But I think that you won't necessarily stop the consumer being able to drive what they want to do with their data, even irrespective of how selective they want to be and who they provide it to. So I think it is a dichotomy, but I think the consumer will actually win out in the future. But it's a challenge for us to try and manage. It is coming our way. It's already here.
Right.
Must be a bit scary for an insurer that the consumer is going to win out.
I think that's a win-win.
Really?
I do. Yeah.
Just hang on a minute. Can I have a contribution from another insurer, please, from another country? Or do you want me to pick one out? Okay. Right. Thanks. Ben. Just the background. If you could just say your name and where you're from, country, please. Fine.
Hi, Sean Ryan from Suncorp, Australia.
Okay, so what's your view on the whole issue of telematics?
I guess from our perspective, Australia certainly, or the Australian insurance industry, hasn't been the fastest to the party as far as telematics are concerned. And, we're, from a Suncorp perspective, we're spending a lot of time, and have spent a lot of time in working through our strategy, I guess, in the adoption of telematics. And as one of the biggest in the country, there are a lot of items that we've got for consideration when we're looking at telematics, and there are a couple of questions and things that popped into my mind when Doug was talking. We're wrestling with. It was interesting that you spoke about consumer demand for this sort of stuff, and we're wrestling with consumer demand versus us needing to inform and educate our customers. We asked the question of uptake and that sort of stuff. So we're wrestling with those two two issues. I guess the other issue is that we're sort of method or style of telematics. Whether we're looking at the mobile form, the mobile phone solution, and we think we're in that space because our premiums are, if you like, lower than a lot of the premiums that are in Europe. So our ability to reward customers with significant discounts in that space. So how do we create a demand and a reason for our customers to use telematics? And then I guess the other thing is we look a little bit longer term as well, and we're having a look at and trying to understand competing in the cherry picking market. So we talk about attracting and gaining the best risks.
Can you just explain to all the audience, because not everybody speaks Australian English, could you explain what you mean by cherry picking?
Yes, so if we're able to, through segmentation and through actual data, we're able to identify the better customer, the lower risk, what we'd call the more profitable sort of risk. If we're doing that, but we're competing in that space with other insurers that are in the same space as what we are, and when we mean competing and we're trying to attract those risks, we're talking lower premiums, which was mentioned previously. What does that mean? What does that mean for our financial results? What does it mean for existing margins? And then flowing on from that, what does that mean for, I think, we termed them the disenfranchised up there before. What does that also mean for their premiums, for their ability to get insurance and that sort of stuff? So that, as we work through our late to the party sort of strategy around telematics, is going, they're the sort of consideration, or just some of the considerations, I guess, that we're taking into account at the minute.
Well, the point is that I think Doug was saying was that telematics will result in reduced premiums, which will definitely affect your income.
That's it. And as soon as you say that, that's a scary proposition at the moment.
But the balance, I suppose, for you is how far does it have to go before the risk is outweighed by the drop in income? I'll give you an example. Credit cards many years ago had a huge amount of fraud. And Barclaycard, who are one of the leading card suppliers, did an evaluation of how much it would cost to make that card secure. And they viewed that it was cheaper to take the fraud than actually put the security measures. And then it got to a point about 10 years ago where the fraud became so huge they had to put it in. It's cheaper to do it. So that's why we now have chip and pin cards where you have to put your number in the card. So it's the same thing for you, isn't it?
It's exactly the same. So, so from our perspective, that's the position we're at the minute, which is there are smaller entrants, I guess, in the market that are taking that, looking at telematics and taking that approach, and will start to pull, through premiums and lower premiums, and their identification of that risk will start to pull, good business away from, the larger incumbents. So, I would suggest now that's how far it has to go, because that's what that's part of the reason we're here. But it's where we're at in our strategy point and knowing there's some urgency in it.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Doug, just to wrap this session up, I know that we've talked about insurers, but you had that graph near the end of the four corners, and one of them was the repairer.
Yeah.
How's a repairer going to plan for this? Because this whatever the model is going to be, there's going to be an element of this that comes into the industry. How does a repairer prepare for this and respond to it?
That's a fascinating question, because some of the innovation that we've seen in terms of trying to address some of the issues that telematics raise has come from the repairer community. Because they have direct interaction with third parties, with first parties, the way in which they can see the car, they can see there's a lot of data that gets managed there. So the control of the customer, the ownership of the customer, the provision of other services, which the insurer from Australia may also be, interested in, then the repairer can also become a distribution point for other services. And that's different revenue streams. So actually, looking at the data that they have, the interaction with the customer, the ownership of that data and customer puts them at a very, very good point. And the exploitation of that going forward could be very beneficial for them as the model changes.
So basically embrace it and use the relationship with the insurer to look at other business opportunities.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, as you were saying earlier, the premium's going to come down from the insurers. We've all got to work together to change the proposition and to educate some of the consumers that will use this type of technology going forward. The education, that Guy mentioned earlier, the proposition and the packaging will be different to how we provide a service at the moment. If we do that properly, there is a fantastic opportunity for everybody involved in the actual supply chain itself.
Okay, so we're never going to be able to cover fully in the time we've got the telematics issue, but what we've done is we've put it on the map, and basically what everybody's going to need to do is keep their eye on the ball and see what's going on. There seems to be daily announcements about telematics. There are conferences on telematics.
Absolutely.
And it's a big subject that we need to embrace. Can you remember what was in your diary Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week?
No idea now, but probably talk about telematics somewhere probably.
Really? Okay.
With insurers, but no, it is an important topic. I think it will have an effect, but it's obviously it's already here. The ability for us is to realise those opportunities.
Okay. Well, great presentation. Great to put it on the table. Even greater that you had such little time. This is a lesson for those who are asked short notice to do a presentation at a conference. Oh, I can't possibly do it in 3 days. This man has proved you can do it. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Thank you, Dave.